Welcome back. We're going to continue on with our discussion that we started on the last video about bow sights. So this is kind of the part two as we get further along understanding all the moving parts on the sight and what you get with what you pay for, right? Bo, let's continue on with the kind of the Q&A, pretending I'm your customer, and let's just say we've decided on this bow. This is kind of more of an entry-level bow, right?
Yep.
And with that, these ready-to-shoot packages, some of those are a little bit more economical as well to start.
Yeah.
So a less expensive sight means less moving parts, less bells and whistles, and less adjustability.
Correct.
So on a sight like this, is there any second or third axis adjustment?
On this particular sight and most sites in a package deal, there generally won't.
Okay. So if you can, and maybe just actually show it to the camera so we can see, when we're talking about second axis and how that adjusts, let's show the viewers kind of what that looks like, right? What we're looking at when we're talking about second axis adjustability, because that's typically most sites, as you start spending a little bit more money, will give you second and third axis adjustability. Very few sites nowadays are starting to offer what they're calling first axis, where you can micro tune that as well. But we'll touch on that later. Second axis to start. Let's kind of showcase that.
So second axis, any of the axes really are going to be directly related to the bubble level or the bubble vial in your sight and how it is oriented to your eye. Okay, so for instance, in second axis, it would work on a horizontal plane. So that's making sure that we can set that level up where the sight is perfectly plumb with the riser. Okay, so when we're holding if we're holding that bow out aiming and we look down at that bubble level, it should read true. We want to make sure the bow is standing perfectly vertical, because if not, and this is where second axis is important, if you can't the bow right or left, your arrows are going to impact right or left. Okay, specifically as we get out towards further distances, it's going to kind of graduate and get bigger, and it's going to cause absolute nightmares.
So then in a sight like this, again, essentially you're getting in a ready-to-shoot package, not all, because some ready-to-shoot packages tier their accessories up a little bit, right?
Yep.
But for just speaking general terms, most of them don't have it. Most of them are actually incorporating some plastic, if you will. Probably not much micro adjust in any of those type of sites,
if any.
So as you start looking at, again, adjustability and features, most of those sites that are $80 or less, I would say maybe even $100 or less, limited on features.
100%.
Okay.
Yep.
So then continuing on from kind of like your basic mid-level type site, and I won't even say mid-level, more basic site, as we start moving up, and let's go ahead and take a look at the other site we have on the table here, and you start to see what is, when you start to see second axis offered, third axis offered, you know, this one's got a photochromatic cover for the fiber, so you bells and whistles, right? Yep. Every manufacturer is going to have a different offering, if you will, or a different version of how to do something. But on this site, let's go ahead and take a look, which this is a black gold site. Second axis is actually adjusted in the housing, in the sight ring, right?
Correct.
So let's go ahead and show the viewers there. If you want to actually show them both, I mean, because this one's actually pretty simple to adjust.
Very simple.
So again, what we would be doing is, if like Bo mentioned before, if the bow is perfectly level, like you should be when you're shooting, and when we check sights, anytime you buy a sight from us, or if you want to bring it in just to level it out, we put in a vise, we start with it there, and we're going to check that everything starts with it level to the bow, and then we're going to adjust that second axis. So again, this one has the ability to adjust it. Some sites adjust from different places, right?
Correct.
So what's one thing, I guess, is that should customers be concerned about where it adjusts more than just if it has the adjustment?
The biggest thing is if it has the adjustment. 100%. I don't worry too much about the exact locations, although some are easier to adjust than others, or at least easier when you're initially looking at the site. Where exactly do I need to go with this? How do I make those adjustments? Black gold, super simple. 2 screws, the little sight ring on here, and you guys may be able to see this. There's 2 screws right here on the sight ring. The sight ring itself will pivot, okay, and basically swing that bubble in order to get it true with the riser. Super simple. Spot hog's a little bit more complicated, but again, if you look at it for just a minute or two, it's right there in front of your face. It's not hard to find.
So then with that, just so that way people understand, before we've gotten to second axis, we've actually checked on a site like this, we've actually checked the block to make sure it's vertical, because that's the other thing, you know, this site actually has an up pin. So you might comment, well, if you're just moving a ring and the pin's off the corner, well, we've actually, step 1 would be to, again, put it in a vise, level the bow up, and then level the block, which is behind here, which would level the body, and then we're leveling to that. So second axis is here. Now let's talk a little bit about third axis. Okay, third axis is the next portion of the leveling out of your sight process, and how that works is typically like, I guess essentially it's like a door hinge on your sight.
Yep.
Right.
That's the easiest way to explain it.
So, Bo, if you don't mind, draw your bow back for me real quick. Obviously, this is Bo's personal bow.
Yep.
So he's okay drawing it back with fingers. I know that's something that
I would not recommend
people to do.
Yeah.
But as he draws his bow back, go ahead and draw it, and actually draw it towards the camera, Bo, if you don't mind for me. So when Bo's drawing his bow back, the cables take the load off the right side on the right-hand shooter, and with that, the bow actually is going to pivot slightly in his hand. If you were to put a level or a laser on this right here, at rest, if he was holding his bow out, it would be straight out. What degree this shift takes place is bow torque, or this, you know, bow shift in his hand. It's different for every bow based off draw length and everything else. You can go ahead and let down, Bo. So what's important to note is if Bo's bow at full draw starts to pivot slightly outward on a right-hand shooter to the right, left-hand shooter be pivoting to the left, what we need to do is that sight is also pivoting out with him. So right-handed shooter draws, the sight's pivoting out, we need to square that to your eye.
Yes.
So why is that important, Bo?
Well, just like second axis, we want to make sure that our bow is perfectly vertical. If the bubble level or bubble vial, however you want to refer to it, is swung away from you, okay, on an uphill or downhill shot, the bubble will lie. Meaning, basically the bubble level, or the bubble itself inside that level, is going to ride to the highest side, okay, the highest point in there. So it's going to lie to you, it's going to tell you, oh man, your bow's not level. Now we're going to cant our bow, and we're going to take it out of plumb, and now we're going to get those right and left impact issues again. So it's I would tell you, third axis is just as important as second axis, which is just as important as first axis, assuming your sight's got all of them.
100%. It's all necessary, right?
Yes.
One of the funny things is early on when we started, you know, really talking to people and introducing them more to third axis, because it hasn't been that long that people really have been adjusting third axis. And one of the funny things that I remember is a lot of times shooters who have been shooting bows for many years got a new sight and they said, oh, I don't need all that fancy stuff.
Yeah.
But we're hunting in Colorado. Yep. And if somebody's even in a tree stand, right?
It still makes a difference. Now, a lot of the times for the guys out east that are hunting out of a tree stand, your shot's not that long. So you maybe haven't seen a real big variance in your right and left, but it's still there.
Yeah, no, 100%. Hamsky is the company that makes the level that we use to level out our sights, and they actually put out a chart. I'd encourage you to go to hamskyarchery.com to look at, they put videos out and charts out to show, based off the degree of bow torque and how much your bubble could be out, the percentage of error.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to see. I mean, somebody that may have a 5-inch average group at 40 yards, for example, and if their bubble's out a certain degree and a certain percentage, you could add another 3 to 5 inches worth of miss at that distance.
Yeah.
Huge, right?
Huge. Absolutely.
So anyway, not to get too technical, again, bringing this back, kind of bow hunting made simple, if you will, understanding that there is more to a sight than just using that pin as a reference as it corresponds with the distance. You need to make sure it's leveled out. The level is there. It has a purpose. And not only is it there for a purpose, you need to actually do some adjustment to it. Some of those are more adjustable than others. So, second, third axis, bring it to your pro shop, whether you come into No Limits Archery or you go somewhere else. if you get anything in that, I would say $125 and up sight price range,
Yep.
I would be asking your pro shop to make sure that they check your second and third axis. The last thing I want to touch on, bow, I had you draw your bow back for third axis as a reference. You always want to adjust third axis
At full draw.
At full draw.
Always want to adjust third axis at full draw. Specifically based on what Phil was saying earlier, the cables are pulled to your right or left side of your bow, depending upon whether you're right or left-handed. All those all that tension tries to get into a straight line, and that's where you get that little bit of torque, and even hand placement can definitely be a factor.
And early on shooters will, I mean, some people would set their bow in a vise and they would just dip their bow down, right? Well, you're missing the part that actually causes the bow torque, which is you drawing the bow. That'll create that shift. So you have to check it at full draw. Anyway, sights are adjustable. The more you spend, more bells and whistles. You'll start to get other features in addition to just micro adjust or brighter pins, that kind of thing with it at the higher end sights. And those features actually are probably the most critical items to accuracy,
100%.
which is the sight leveling. So hope you enjoyed this video. We're going to keep bringing you more terminology and or explanations as to parts and pieces on the bow. So if you haven't seen part 1 to the sight video, I'm going to go ahead and link that below. Go ahead and check that video out as well. Comment, let us know if there's anything else you want us to touch on, and we will see you all soon.